Today I'm going to be talking about how to hack a hospital. So the title is a little misleading here. We're actually going to be talking about how to prevent attacks on hospitals and how to secure hospitals in the future. So my name is Benjamin Taylor, and this is a quick disclaimer. So this presentation is for educational purposes only, and none of this information should be used for any illegal or harmful activities. I'm not responsible for any misuse of this information. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some software that was used to break into these hospital systems. So this content is just to raise awareness about cybersecurity threats and the importance of the protection. Alright, so our problem today. Here's a quote from Bruce Schneier. The internet is about to start killing people, and the government regulates things that kill people. So as IoT devices become more integrated into healthcare, transportation, and critical infrastructure, cyber attacks have life and death consequences now. So what this means is that, like for example, in a healthcare setting, these people are relying on this technology to save their lives in a sense, and when it gets compromised, then they have none of that support. Cyber attacks like the WannaCry attack demonstrate how entire industries can go down in just minutes alone. So some key definitions. Does anyone want to volunteer and read these out? So for cybersecurity.
Yeah, so cybersecurity is measures taken to protect a computer or computer system against unauthorized access or attack.
Okay, IoT or Internet of Things.
The Internet of Things is the networking capability that allows information to be sent to and received from objects and devices, such as fixtures and kitchen appliances using it.
All right, great. And hacking? Anybody?
To gain illegal access to a computer, network, system, etc.
All right, great. And so for NSA?
National Security Association.
All right, great. That's an abbreviation. I'm going to be talking about the NSA a little bit in this presentation. So those are just some key definitions I wanted to clear up. So our focus today. The focus of this presentation is to explore hardening cybersecurity in healthcare systems from a historical, scientific, and ethical perspective. So my background, I'm a student at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and I'm doing computer science with a concentration in cybersecurity. All right, so what is WannaCry? It's a global ransomware epidemic. So ransomware, that's defined as like the system is taken over and they're holding everything up for ransom. In this case, the WannaCry attack, they charged $300 in Bitcoin per system that was compromised. So this was a major security incident, and it impacted organizations all over the world. So on May 12th of 2017, the ransomware worm spread to more than 200,000 computers and over 150 companies. Some notable victims being FedEx, Honda, Nissan, and most importantly, the UK's NHS, which we'll be talking about in this presentation. So the WannaCry hospital attack, the NHS went down in minutes alone. So the hackers exploited the outdated Windows systems, and over 80 hospitals and 595 general practitioner practices were affected. So this means that surgeries were canceled, ambulances were they had to say that they couldn't take patients in, send them to the next hospital over. That one was compromised, just keeps going down the line. And the patient care was ultimately disrupted. So each system had $300 ransom in Bitcoin. This meant that for every computer that they wanted to get back up and running, they had to pay $300 to the attackers. So this infected MRI scanners, blood storage refrigerators, and diagnostic equipment, and it was all rendered useless. So why are hospitals vulnerable in the first place? They have outdated systems. These hospitals were all running Windows XP and Windows 7 when Windows 10 was up and running, actively being worked on. They had interconnected IoT devices, which means they were all on the same network, which made it easy for the worm to get in, spread throughout all the devices. They had a lack of cybersecurity funding and improper data backups, which meant that it took them weeks and even months to get back the data that they lost from this attack. If they had a data backup, they could have easily just got everything back within hours, maybe days, instead of the weeks and months it took. So the hackers used the leaked NSA tool to exploit the unpatched systems. Now, the National Security Association was using this tool to spy on people, and it was leaked a month before the attack happened. And Windows 10 had already released a patch for this before it happened, so some may say the hospital should have had their stuff together, maybe updated their systems, ran on a newer software, but running on the old software, this is so easy to get into. And the self-spreading worm, the ransomware spread automatically throughout the networks. And the data encryption and ransom, all the files were locked, a ransom note appeared on every single screen. And then going into another attack, the NotPetya ransomware attack, this one happened about a month after, a little over a month after. And global companies and even the government were paralyzed in this case. And it spread using the same NSA exploit, but it was much more destructive. So it infected systems. It looked like there was ransomware, but instead of paying the price to get the information back, it permanently wiped all the data. So whenever they paid to get their stuff back, everything was gone, regardless or not. So this impacted shipping services, pharma, FedEx, hospitals, and even the Chernobyl radiation monitoring stations. And it caused over $10 billion in damage instead of the $4 billion in the last attack. So some real-world consequences. The immediate impact on the hospitals, there were over 19,000 appointments and surgeries canceled following this attack. And ambulances were diverted, as we talked about. They were locked out of patient records, and they had inoperable medical devices. Now, for financial and operational costs, they lost approximately $4 billion in the WannaCry attack in recovery and lost services. They had massive delays in treatment, and the data restoration itself took weeks to load. Now, for long-term consequences, they had increased investment in cybersecurity awareness and IT infrastructure. They had new government regulations coming for healthcare cybersecurity compliance, and they had other ransomware attacks that were continued to target the hospitals afterwards, such as Ryuk-Conti. And these attacks keep happening because threatened hospitals are always going to pay the price to save their patients. So if a machine's down, if a computer's down that has patient files, someone's suffering a heart attack, say, the hospital is going to pay to restore their systems rather than let someone die. That's how these attackers know that they can make money. So how to prevent another WannaCry attack? We can keep software up to date, use strong and unique passwords, enable two-factor authentication, and don't click on any suspicious links. So phishing emails were one of the main entry points to the WannaCry attack, which means somebody was posing as someone else, and someone likely logged in on like a fake website, submitted their information to the attacker, they were in. So these are all some key ways that we can prevent it on our own level.
Alright, talk about spam emails.
Yeah, in a sense.
My dad has been getting one of those, and especially from Apple, but not from Apple, someone impersonating as Apple about, the iCloud subscription. And he asked me to double check his subscription. It's fine. Just keep saying it's overdue, this and that.
Yeah, and see what happens. And chances are, if you're getting a toll text from an iCloud account, then it's not going to be the real thing. Just wanted to put that out there. So here's a 2-minute video I found. This is kind of going over what I talked about, a little bit about the NSA and their involvement.
Here's what you need to know about the ransomware that's been dubbed WannaCry. Security experts say this is one of the worst and most widespread pieces of malware they've ever seen, especially because it's even caused some hospitals in the UK to have to cancel outpatient appointments. So what exactly happens to infected computers, and how big is this? The ransomware actually locks up all the files in your computer and demands $300 in Bitcoin in order to regain control. People are seeing this message all around the world, and researchers say they've seen tens of thousands of infections in about 100 countries. Researchers say this is spreading through a Windows weakness known as Eternal Blue, which Microsoft released a patch for last month. This ransomware is actually just going through the internet looking through vulnerable computers, according to cybersecurity firm Malwarebytes. That means you don't even have to click a phishing email to get infected. How can you protect yourself? Well, you know those seemingly annoying security updates for Microsoft Windows? If you've installed the latest one, you're safe. If you haven't, do it right away. For now, that's about it. Who's responsible? Researchers aren't pointing their fingers yet, but the most amount of attacks so far have been in Taiwan, Ukraine, and Russia, according to Avast. Former NSA contractor Edward Snowden tweeted, "If the NSA had privately disclosed the flaw used to attack these hospitals when they found it, not when they lost it, this may not have happened." And that's being echoed by experts we're talking to.
Alright, so basically, the NSA had this tool before it got leaked out to the public, and that's kind of to blame for why these attackers had access to it. Somebody leaked it a month before the attack happened. Alright, so I'm going to speed things up a little bit. So for hardening cybersecurity, these are some of the ways that we can prevent this from happening to future hospitals. So these are 4 key ways that I found: network segmentation, the zero trust security model, continuous monitoring and threat detection, and regular security audits and compliance. So when we define these, network segmentation essentially means that we're putting each individual device on a different network essentially. So that way if a worm got into the network, it couldn't spread into everything. The zero trust security model, we use that here at UNC Charlotte with Duo Mobile. That means that nobody's trusted, and there's strict identity verification every time you try to log in. For continuous monitoring and threat detection, this means that most companies are implementing AI to do this now, but they're essentially checking to make sure that there's nothing wrong in the system. And if they start to sense an attack happening, then someone will usually step in and end it before it gets out of hand. And then regular security audits and compliance. This means that there are people in the cybersecurity field who do this, where they go in and they test the system, try to act as an attacker in a sense to make sure that there's no vulnerabilities that are at least visible for us to see. So IoT everywhere is at risk. Smart cities, smart homes, and smart vehicles. These are all a part of our lives in a way, and hackers can get control of all of these different things. So for smart cities, they can shut down power grids, control traffic lights, disable public services. Smart homes, smart locks, cameras, and thermostats can be hijacked. One example could be like an attacker going in, turning off your heat in the winter, freezing your pipes. They could open up your front door through the smart locks. Or for self-driving cars, there was the 2015 Tesla Model S hack. This was done ethically, but they were able to get control over the brakes and different components of the Tesla. And while it was moving, this could be used to do a lot of harm, could cause lives. So moving forward, we need to invest in stronger security practices, which means the regular updates, multi-factor authentication, and real-time monitoring to help stop these cyber attacks. We can raise awareness and educate people, where most attacks start with human error. So training can prevent these risks, like mandatory company onboarding, cybersecurity training. People like getting informed on what to click on in their email and whatnot. That's a huge part of stopping this from happening if people had the education. And we can also advocate for better regulations and policies. So governments need to enforce stricter security laws for IoT devices, critical infrastructure. Like, at what point do we draw the line between smart devices? Like, is a smart toaster, smart refrigerator really necessary, or is it just a breach of our privacy? All right, here's my contact. Thank you so much for listening. Any questions?
No,